The most rewarding game mode within Ultimate Team is, of course, Champions. But unfortunately, it can be one hell of a grind. Not only do you need to go through the Champions finals in order to get the best rewards, but at first you need to qualify for the finals by going through the playoffs. And then you also need to qualify for the playoffs by going through division rivals. But don't worry, today we are going to be going through the laziest way in which you can play. Still claim rewards without having to dedicate as much time. But before we do get into the video, if you're looking to push your team ahead without needing to go through the grind, then there is no better place than U4GM. They offer cheap, fast and reliable EAFC coins. If you're interested, there is a link in the description down below, and if you use code Fanatic, you'll also get yourself a 5% discount. Thank you U4GM for sponsoring today's video. Now let's get back into it. We should start off by saying that there's no cheat codes for you to get to the Champions final. You still need to be a relatively good player, or at the very least above average, because there are some things that you just have to do. However, the very first step is nothing really to do with skill, but more about just the amount of time that you dedicate to the game. This is qualifying for the Champions playoffs. For this, you're going to need to have 1,250 qualification points. Now, this number could change in the future. There have been times in which EA have changed this, but it's been a while since they have last changed the amount of points required. But the only way in which you can get these qualification points is by going through division rivals. After every single game, whether or not you get a win, a draw, or a loss, you will be rewarded with points. And the amount of points will also depend on what division you're in. For example, a win within Division 1 is going to reward you with more qualification points than a win within Division 10. And if you are just starting through Ultimate Team, it is a bit of a grind in order for you to build up 1,250 qualification points, especially when Division 10 really doesn't give that much. You may not be able to qualify until you get to Division 7, potentially even Division 6. This is one of those things that you cannot avoid. However, you can limit the amount of games that you play. The best thing for you to do is put a grind up front for you to get as far in division rivals as possible. And the reason for this is because you will not be relegated, not until the season ends, where you'll be relegated by 2 divisions from wherever you currently stand. But if you're able to get out of Division 10, push all the way through to some of the top divisions, as said, you'll be able to get a lot more points per match that you play compared to if you're in those lower divisions. So if you can get to that point a lot quicker, it will make life a lot easier for the rest of the season for you to continuously qualify without having to play a ridiculous amount of games. And that's one thing that we want to avoid. If we're looking for the laziest, the most efficient way to go through this, you ideally only want to be winning anywhere between 3 to 7 games every single week within division rivals, because anything extra on top you are not rewarded for. You get absolutely nothing apart from the coins you receive at the end of that match. So with this, if you're wanting to be lazy, you need to put that work up front first, and then for the rest of the season, in fact for the rest of Ultimate Team, you can just cruise, carry on doing what you're doing, playing the bare minimum. Once you have 1,250 qualification points, that is when you can go into the Champions playoffs, in which you need 20 points. 20 points for you to get a qualification token. The good thing is that you have 10 games to do this, and you are rewarded for losing. Every single game that you play, it can either end in one of 2 ways. You either win the game, you lose the game. There are no draws. But with this, you'll be rewarded 4 points for a win and 1 point for a loss. Unfortunately, you can't lose every single game and still qualify, as you will then only have 10 points. And it's uncommon for people to gift out wins within the Champions playoffs. It does happen, but it's just not as common. So this is the point in where you do need to be an above average player. You do need to get at least 4 wins. 4 wins guarantees that you will qualify, because that gives you 16 points, and with the games you have remaining, even if you were to lose each and every single one of them, you will be able to qualify. Now, how I like to go through this is I do the bare minimum. I will go through, win my 4 games, and then I will start to forfeit the remaining matches. That way I can instantly get to the rank that I need in order to qualify, claim my qualification token, claim the rewards, because that's also a benefit with Champions. Rewards get paid out instantly and you do not need to wait every single week, and then you can move to the Champions final. If you're looking for efficiency as well as laziness, this is the way to go. In terms of forfeiting matches, yes, you can be that person who goes into a game, immediately pauses at 0-0 and quits. However, this is a very toxic way to play, because even though you still get the loss for quitting that game, your opponent, that game doesn't count for them. So it's recommended just to take an extra 30 to 40 seconds to play the game and then actually pass back to your keeper, put it into your back of your own net, then pause, then quit. That way they're up 1-0, and when you do quit, they get the win. And that brings us to the Champions Final. This is the most rewarding game mode within the game. You can get the best rewards on offer compared to any other game mode, with there being player picks, with there being full gold player packs, you get coins, you get qualification points, and also you can get XP, which could progress you through your seasonal rewards as well. It's also one of the sweatiest game modes that you can play through due to the rewards being on offer, and on top of that, it can also be some of the worst gameplay depending what day you're playing. If you're playing on a Sunday, well, good luck to you, because you are not going to be able to do anything without there being a second delay. Just like the Champions playoffs, you are rewarded every single time you win and lose. 4 points for a win, 1 point for a loss. If you're a good, confident player, you can go through this and you can get a decent amount of points whilst also giving yourself a decent reward. If you hit a high enough rank, you'll also be rewarded with enough qualification points for you to immediately go back through the Champions playoff without you needing to go through division rivals. If you want to go through this the laziest way possible, then you could also forfeit your games. And this is what I do most of the time. I don't have enough time over the weekend for me to play all 20 games, not from start to finish. And there's also moments where even if I did have enough time, I don't want to spend my time going through terrible gameplay, especially if it is on a Sunday like we mentioned earlier. So I would start to forfeit all my games. But despite saying that, I will not end 0 and 20, because this is what's interesting about the matchmaking within Ultimate Team. You are likely to be matched up to someone who's got a similar skill rating to you. It doesn't happen all the time, but you have a much higher likelihood of that happening. So when you start within a Champions Final at 0-0, you could be coming up against anyone. But as you go through your first game and forfeit, your second game and forfeit, and keep this going, you'll get to 5 losses, and then you'll start to be matched up to others with a similar record. They might not be 0 and 5, but they likely have more losses than wins. And that's going to happen for one of two reasons. Either they're doing the exact same thing as you, where they're forfeiting their games, or they're not as confident within game, and they have been trying, they just have a record where they're losing. And this is where some very easy wins can come in, and the choice here is up to you. If you were to carry on with your streak with the intent to forfeit all games, at the beginning of kickoff, if your opponent has kickoff, there may be a situation where they're going to do the same thing. They score an own goal before they forfeit, gifting you the win. Or at this point, you can stop your forfeit streak and start playing for some very easy wins. And in a lot of cases, even if you were to go and score a goal, they may forfeit anyway. So the game could last just a matter of minutes. What I recommend doing if you are going to forfeit your games at this point is that you play for just a bit, because sometimes you will have kickoff and you'll have the intent to forfeit, put it back to your keeper, put it into the back of your net, and then forfeit a game. But in a lot of situations, what you might find is your opponent has the exact same intent. So if you were to actually play kickoff and play for just a few minutes, you may realize that your opponent brings out their goalkeeper, or maybe they get the ball back, boot it back to their keeper, and forfeit. Now, it should also be highlighted that not everything's going to be a happy ending, so to speak, and that you won't be gifted wins indefinitely. There will be opponents that you come up to who forfeit at 0-0. We're still in a toxic community, and EA have no clue how to solve this issue, despite it being fairly easy. But that is a rant for another day. The reward you get isn't going to be anything too crazy, but what is very good with this is that you will have a very good reward for the amount of time that you've dedicated. And speaking, this is still early days as part of FC24, but I found it a lot easier to find games this year to forfeit to then go back through and do this 20 times compared to last year. Once you get a terrible record, it suddenly becomes harder for EA to find an appropriate opponent. So matchmaking takes a lot longer, and sometimes it will reply back with a message saying that there were no opponents found. I did not experience that this year. Found a game every single time, and it was a lot better, so to speak. Another point in which this would be recommended to go through is on the final couple weekends of the season. For those of you who do find it very easy to qualify every single time, you may not know this, but there is a certain amount of entries you can have within the Champions playoff during a season. As you are someone who's above average and can easily qualify for the Champions final, you may have some of these entries remaining. So with the points you get back from your Champions finals, you can start to build up again. You may need to go into division rivals, but if you already played enough games and got enough wins, you can immediately go back through playoffs, win 4 games, forfeit the rest, qualify, go through your Champions finals, forfeit all matches, and go through all final entries so much quicker than anyone else, whilst also claiming all the rewards available for a weekend. Now, of course, as part of this video, we're going through the laziest way to play, which is also the most efficient way to play, so to speak. So having to go through more qualification in order for you to go through more finals is not exactly lazy. That's certainly you putting in more effort. But I thought I would mention it anyway, because I know there's probably going to be some people that have the time to do this, and they also have the ability to do it as well. But to quickly recap and go through everything, if you're starting, you want to get to as high of a division as possible so that you have to play less games in order for you to get the exact same qualification points. With those, you're going to enter into the Champions playoffs, and you need to go and get 20 points, but just win 4 games, forfeit the rest. And then you're going to go into the Champions finals, where you can play however you want. In most cases, I forfeit all my games, but I will not end with a record of 0-20. It's likely I will get some good players. It's likely I will get some wins, and whatever rank I get with the rewards that I get, yes, on paper they're not as good, but like most things with an Ultimate Team, your rewards do come down to a chance. You can have the best possible rewards, and even though they do give a higher chance of getting something good, there's still no guarantee. If you enjoyed this video, then I'm sure you'll enjoy the next video. That goes through the correct way in which you should be grinding moments. It can be very rewarding without needing to put any effort in whatsoever. So click that and I'll be over there to guide you through absolutely everything. I hope you enjoy.